is that's
This meeting is being recorded.
good. Okay, we're being recorded. My name is Lyno Sullivan. I'm the presenter this afternoon to the Futurist Society of Minnesota. And we're here courtesy of Brian Toran, who's the big host. And so I'm going to leave people as we do comments. Please just say your first name, last name, so people will recognize your voice. We're making what I consider to be a quality production movie. I'll do the best I can to host it. So with that, let me go ahead now and share my screen. And let's see now, I have to somehow get rid of those pictures. Let's see, what do I do? Hide self view. I don't know. Sorry, I'm gonna have to go to full screen and see what happens. Okay, so what I need to do is somehow haul this thing out of the way, and I'll drop it there. And I'm going to haul this thing out of the way. This is really tedious.
Try your view menu up top and see if there's a slideshow option.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really unfamiliar. This is a good product. I love it, but boy, it can be a challenge. Nope. So I've got more. I'm going to try, like I did before, to drag this out of the way.
Hit slideshow up at the top and then beginning, and it will expand the screen.
Okay. So I'm now looking at this, and so in PowerPoint, how do I go to the full screen? Thank you so much for your help, everybody, by the way.
Look at slideshow across the top.
Right under the red bar.
Okay.
It says slideshow.
Okay.
Click on that.
And so I just try it.
Or
Click on it.
Click on slideshow. That'll
Okay.
get rid of the things on the left.
Let's see here. Okay, so I have to presenter view, custom view,
Nope.
hide slide. Oh gosh, you can see where I am.
Okay. Right under the red bar at the top is a whole series of little tags. One of them is slideshow.
Yes, I'm in there, I believe.
Or click on slideshow.
Well,
Okay,
your cursor
I
is
am.
not there.
I can do play from start and hope that it's not going to animate stuff. So I'm going to give that a go.
Yes.
And okay, if that makes sense, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Okay, what did it do? I have to escape out of that. That's worthless. So what I'm going to do, I apologize. I'm going to try to shrink this side view down. Come on. Get as much real estate as I can. And now I should be able to, okay, so here we go. Thank you. So
my view has not changed.
okay. Your view has not changed. Oh gosh, here we go. So I've got to find my share button. I've got to resume share. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, and now it's moving. Sorry, let me get over here. It's moving. Oh, and you can see it. Oh my gosh, what a nightmare. Okay,
this is why we rehearse before we do the presentation.
Oh yeah, yes, and that's on me. I should have rehearsed. I didn't know how. Okay,
we
so
can read this just fine. You can
good, yeah. And I'm going to skim. I'm not going to have you read everything. I have to say up front, this is not a solicitation for investment. This is a business document that presents and tries to answer the question of our purpose. We eliminate greenhouse gas. How do we do that? And so one of the things I offer on the right is an address And there's a form. If you want to follow along, you can go fill out a form. And I can show you that form in just a moment. Let me, if I can find it. It is called, oh gosh, now it's not going to drag. Let me drag it. Okay, it's going to mess with me. Okay, so so you can play along if you want. And now let me move. So
You can
in
do that with the up and
if-
down arrows too.
Yeah, oh, yes, I'll use those. They're easier. So outline, and here's what the topics we're going to cover. The blue, that's the brand, the symbol, the circle C is a symbol of carbonic, and I color it and use it for various purposes. So our outline, what is waste? What's Carbonic's approach to waste? Varied topics, greenhouse gas, opportunities, commercialization, teamwork, and then we'll have a section for questions, lagoon management and measurement, and farmer data products. So if you went to the waste.carbonic.live, you would be able to see the farmer data product. Okay,
Lyno,
go ahead, please, if there's a quick
Um,
question.
do you want questions only during your question time, or do you want?
I would say, how about this? If somebody has their hand up for the whole period, just make sure, if you would, folks, to kind of not go on a soapbox or anything, and let's keep it to a minute or 30 seconds. And with that, then if you recognize them, just speak their name into the record, and they can speak their name, and then we know who's on the mic. So that work for you?
Yep.
Okay, good enough. So what is waste? And I'm not going to read this. I'll spend time on it. Feel free to take snapshots if you want to. So the issue that I'm asking, I'm taking the question, what is waste? And I've gone down through and put together various information. The fact that waste collection, 68 billion US dollars, 2022, 3% a year. That's interesting to know. What everyone sees, where everyone sees waste, Carbonic sees a joint product that comes from an invention. Suppose there was a technical solution that's the building block for solving general waste handling problems. That's the Carbonic question. So the Carbonic approach to waste is kind of twofold generally. Microbiology, whenever you can solve a problem with microbiology, do so. And thermochemistry. And so the microbiology produces, using an anaerobic digestion, AD is what it's shortened to, process, which involves methanogen bacteria. It produces biogas. And then there's a step that cleans biogas, and that's removing sulfur and other contaminants. And you want as clean a gas coming out of the microbiology as you can get, because the downstream chemistry, if you don't get rid of it at the front end, you're going to get rid of it somewhere, or you're going to embed it in your way downstream products, and you don't want to do that in general. So methanogens, I can let you read that. There's one that operates around the vents in Yellowstone Park, for example, that can go above boiling. And extremophiles is interesting a name. So there's two different pathways to producing methane, and methane is the backbone of everything we're doing. That's the underlying chemistry, and we'll see it all the way to the end of the various processes. So we clean methane, we have to dewater it. Methane, if you're going to put it into a grid, it's got to be dewatered. If you want to call it RNG, renewable natural gas, has to be from renewable sources and clean natural gas. Costs 3 times as much RNG as it does for fossil fuel, just a number to keep in mind. And so you have to dewater it. There's various temperature gradient that the stuff goes through. First temperature gradient, there's a dewatering process mechanically where you get the water out. There's a step where the temperature gets above 100 degrees centigrade, 105 or so, the water starts to come out. Pyrolysis can begin, biochar production, and then the bottom line of all of this is HDPE production, because HDPE is the best solution, in my view, to carbon sequestration, because it's a solid. And when you put stuff into HDPE plastic, it can last for centuries. And so that's kind of the end game where we're heading. Catalysis adds catalyst to get a reaction. If anybody needs a definition to me to slow down, speak, please. So I have a topic on the greenhouse gas eliminator. It's kind of a GHG, greenhouse gas eliminator, call to action. And we're looking at waste carbon collection systems. That symbol on the right is the worm Uroburo, which eats its own tail for nourishment. And so I borrowed that symbol and I put the carbonic brand inside of it. And it's symbolic of when we're building these systems, we have to eat our own tail. And what that means is eat the carbon dioxide that we're producing in our industrial processes and everywhere else, taking it out of the atmosphere when it's energy effective. Here you get what you get out of the system. So carbon collection systems, and I'll talk about those. Politics, I'll talk a little bit about that. I mentioned the outreach of forms and client data. And my advice to everybody is to go towards a future where you own your own computer. It's safe on a database that you own, because I think that everybody's information is at risk if you don't own it. And I put mine in the cloud and on my computer. So that's just my own little advisory end of that topic.
Lyno, I have a quick question for
Wells has a
clarification.
question.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned these two processes involving microbiology and thermal chemistry. What I'm trying to understand is, I think it sounds like this is actually two steps of a two-step process. The microbiology produces methane, and then thermal chemistry breaks it down. Is that what it is?
Yes, that would be an explanation. And it's a temperature gradient that causes that breakdown. But go ahead, please. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. It's not either or, it's two steps.
Two steps, and there's a hydrogen production cycle. Whenever you produce steam, you can pull hydrogen out if you use Minnesota iron catalysts when they create them.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah, iron. So this is kind of the topics. Here's the products. And so this is the constant to think about. Fossil fuels, 1/3 the RNG cost. RNG is renewable natural gas, and Carbonic is putting together a product specification for renewable HDPE and trying to create a market for it. And I can touch on that in a bit, but that's how Carbonic is trying to solve the problem. So products and services, lagoon management, that's a big deal. When it rains, a lagoon fills up, and they put tarps on them and they capture the methane that comes off, capture rainfall. So there's lots of solutions in the space. Nothing particularly new other than that we do it. We take an existing kind of a process that fills a lagoon, and we put it into a continuous flow process where, as the manure arrives, it goes into tanks for processing and stays in tanks for some number of days, producing methane, getting rid of, producing ammonia, producing its products over time. And then it takes its final effluent and gathers the ash and that material out of it once the methane, the carbon's gone. And that's a part of the process. Why am I talking about that? I apologize, I lost track. So the anaerobic digester consumes carbon dioxide, produce recycle water. Okay, I hit all the things. DME, dimethyl ether, is known as pure diesel, and it's easily producible. It was Oliver's favorite product on the gas side, and is a feeder to other downstream industries. Sorry, I'm fumbling. So the greenhouse gas, GHG, there's some stuff on the left, some background, interesting stuff. Notice that transportation, 27% GHG, electricity, 25, industry, 24, residential, 13, agriculture, 11. So when I'm talking about taking pig manure, I'm sitting down in the low percentages. And so one of the things that this technology works on is it wants carbon. It takes carbon where it can get it. And it wants to produce, it can produce methane, it can produce carbon-based products that you can turn around and combust, but that doesn't sequester carbon. That just turns it into a commodity. And so all of those options are available to the farmer, basically, or to the industry that carbonic is trying to get created. So the innovation, we're trying to seek total capture and processing of GHG from methane produced by pigs in the barn, all the way into the machine and into plastic at the back end, or into methane into the market, or in my favorite, second favorite is into a nice methane burning electricity generator. And those can be as much as, just a 454 Ford engine, if I remember, or whatever. It's just got to turn a generator, obviously. It doesn't have to be a fancy turbine, and a gasoline engine that's been adapted suffices. So in the atmosphere on the right there, bottom right, the GHG we're trying to eliminate the most is carbon dioxide. As an ethic of the human species, we owe it to ourselves to not make a mess of the environment. I'm sorry, that's one of my opinions. Hydrofluorocarbons, aerosols, refrigerants, we need to not put them in. And we know we're not doing that, the ozone and all of that. We know those lessons. Methane, fertilizers, sulfur from electrical, rubber, irrigation, small stuff. Carbon dioxide's the big stuff in terms of eliminating GHG, and methane 15%. As I mentioned, hydrofluorocarbons are being dealt with. So carbon collection.
Carol has
We
a
do, and
question.
I'm talking. Oh, go ahead. Did somebody have a question?
Yeah,
Yes,
Carol.
Go ahead,
Just a
please.
quick practical question. You're talking about lagoon management, and this is basically animal waste.
Yes.
Do you have to do it differently for like cows and pigs, herbivores and omnivores?
I do not know the answer to that. I've not studied it. I do know that on a mix-in basis, that mixing pig manure as a basic high nitrogen input, along with other carbon sources. My favorite is hemp, but other carbon sources just inputs more carbon into the system, and that's our basic goal, because our process wants to capture all of it. Did I
Right.
answer the question, or did I go off on a tangent?
Well, it didn't really answer my question, but
Okay, can you ask it again, please? Let me give it another go. It's important.
do you have to process differently when you are using waste from herbivores like cows?
Okay,
Then you're
to my
using
knowledge, the answer is no.
pigs.
That it goes into a digester. There's a different, it has to be kind of not digested, but broken into a slurry. And so it has to be made kind of homogeneous, consistent, so that it feeds in to a process that uh, keeps the stuff mixed up to let the bacteria get into it. And so
That
it
answers
breaks
my
it down
question.
to a few millimeters.
Thank you.
Tom
Okay,
also
you're
has a
welcome. Go ahead, please.
Tom?
Just the one question, you're talking about removing carbon dioxide from the environment and producing methane. Methane is a much worse warming factor than carbon dioxide is. It has a much bigger effect. So
Mhm.
you have to be really careful to sequester all that methane that you're producing and not let any leak out in the environment.
Exactly, and we just have constraints, and one of them is carbon in, HDPE out, or a commodity product into an open market, high quality. And those are just the guidelines, the rules, they're the words we speak about what we're thinking and what we're planning on doing, and that's kind of where we are. Is we don't, we eliminate greenhouse gas as our moniker. And it's because we're serious about it, and we'll do the best we can, and we'll improve it, and we'll measure it and monitor it, and invite inspection. So let me go on to the carbon collection system. One of the mistakes we make in urban environments, particularly, is we tell our citizens, social value, you have to separate your trash out. And so you put all of your plastic jugs and your glass and your recyclables, cans and all of that in one container, and you put your trash into polyethylene bags and put those in the other trash can. And so that's the way you separate. It's all wrong. The county commissioners, the haulers, all of that, they need to think about that differently. What we're looking for is hopefully robot delivered curbside carbon collection, where there's an HDPE can that you can put plastic recyclables, carbon waste, dead ash if you needed to. I mean, you could put anything, trim your trees. Anything that's carbon goes into the carbon. HDPE itself goes in. And so we're collecting all of the carbon, and then we separate out batteries and electronics, small appliances, metal glassware, big appliances, donations, because we're going after carbon. That's it. And keep metal to the minimum, because we don't want to have to start grinding metal into our ash. Unless we want to, I guess. So that's kind of the equation. And so that's our innovation. And so we're trying to put together then a set of commissioners who will give us a carbon supply that we can process through our process. And we put together a supply chain that begins with the farmers, the haulers, the processors, and then the HDP supply chain products that we produce. And we have systems and we have agreements, and we have to put together a supply chain that someone says, if I can deliver you 5 tons a day from 1,000 pigs of manure, I will do that every day that my herd is alive, something like that. So that's kind of the carbon innovation, the collection, commercialization, the outreach. If you're looking at the farm, and I'll drop us in there somewhere later if I can. We're doing an outreach, and so what we're doing is we're collecting the opinion of our farming population, polls and surveys. What do you think? What's your biggest regulation problem? Count 1 to 10. Where are you on regulations? What do you think about greenhouse gas? Is it 1 to 5? Whatever. I won't pin down the extremes you can imagine, Likert scales and all of that. And so it's just collecting opinion, putting it into what I believe are sensible categories around the theme of having something to do with carbonic, and gathering data. And so that feeds into marketing and things like that we have to actually be able to sell products, so we have to have a marketing support. I talked about a little bit about products. Politics, we talked about that. And then there's various other politics involved in companies and media, social media, do the smart stuff. There's our supply chain again, adding in cattle and just feedlot manure in general. I have available, and I think I mentioned it, teamwork. Let's see if this is it. I'll mention it when I come to it. So what I'm looking at is the opportunity for teamwork. I'm coming with an organizational structure that says it starts with the management team. I need people to fill a management, not I, Carbonic needs people to fill a management team, a material research team. That's my number one. If I had to put myself somewhere in the world, I would put myself in charge of materials research, because that's where the future comes from. Client teams, you know, we have county teams that have team leaders, and all of this stuff. If you work in business, it should be very familiar. The stuff in the lower right, the hash language, that's something I'm inventing that helps organize data. And for those with the system, I put in hashtag manure, and all of a sudden, around it comes a screen that a farmer can go to and talk about manure. You know, and so I put in one of those, and around it comes a set of forms and screens and pages and everything. And so a farmer can put in, someone interested in the system can put in hashtag ocean plastic, and around it'll form a world that they can take charge of the information in it. You know, it's that kind of just expansive capability for organization building, opportunity for teamwork, workflows, talent over time equals work. Again, you know, one of mine is imagine the future, imagine the organization, and it's emerging now from workflows and teamwork. And so there's team workflows that I talked about, and some techie stuff thrown in the upper right, client workflows, things that involve feedlot data intake. I have feedlot data for all of the feedlots in Minnesota in a database, a GIS database, available for mailings. And so a team, when I can pull it together, I can say, get in touch with these people. Here's their phone numbers, they add their addresses, introduce yourself, and invite them into the sales.
Diane has a question.
Please ask. Thank you for the interrupt, or yes.
Just curious about it. I think from a slide back, it looked like you were needing to have all of the materials brought to a central location. Is that correct? You're thinking of having one manufacturing site, or is there a possibility that this can be created on sites and have multiple independent systems so that you can eliminate the transportation costs?
Yep. Yes, my number one foundation principle is democracy. And I believe that the farmers need to own their own destiny. And so I'm looking for a farm scale solution. I mentioned 1,000 pigs, that's 5 tons a day. And there's small scales that I know I can handle that. The cost, as near as I can figure, is $500,000 for a farm. So they're going to have to amortize it over some loan. And Carbonic will split the HDPE they produce in some way and do something grand with it. So that's the vision. Did I answer your direct question? Please continue if you have more.
No, that's awesome. 500,000 is less than some of the modern equipment that they have to buy to keep up with the demand of, you know, big ag. So it seems that's really exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the goal that I have. And I've heard that I'm off by a factor of 10. And that features into a later discussion when we talk about scale. But so the lagoon level
Tom
is.
Walsh had a question.
Oh, please ask.
All right. You're talking about most of your source being manure from farms. the farmer's production of manure depends on hoof-raised meat. And that process involves producing a lot of methane.
Yes,
And so you're not, if you're encouraging the growth of cattle or pigs, that's not going to solve our global warming problem. Because you're encouraging the production of methane, which you're not capturing.
yeah.
What I would suggest is concentrating on collecting plastics and processing those. That would be a net positive for the environment rather than the
Mhm.
process you're suggesting.
Yes,
And I think eventually, with the lab-grown meats and that kind of thing becoming more popular and the process is improving, that source of your manure may dry up a little bit in the future anyway.
yes, and we're talking decades. So
Yep.
near term, near term, it kind of coming out of the gate. We're going to be factoring in. We're going to be using manure for our demo for raising capital, which is I'm not talking about capital here, but it's a reality, and and so. There's other aspects that I'm not talking about intentionally, that if you think it through, the common sense things like food waste, what are we doing with all of our food waste? What are we doing with all of our biomass waste? How about a big grocery store, all of its food and cardboard waste? How about a box store, all of its packaging waste? These are solutions that are, and they're spread all over the writings that I do. I'm looking for a generic solution that with a different front end and a different back end and the same middle part can produce with the back end HDPE. It can pull methane out of the middle. It can produce solid biochar products, liquid, solid, and gas, and so it's a choice that the farmer will make about what do they want to put as input. Do they want to go out and pull all the corn stalks down after they harvest their corn and feed it? It'll be an individual decision. And, ultimately it would be like a riding lawnmower. You want to cut the lawn, well, you go put the grass cutter on it, and you want to till the soil, and so you put so on. I don't need to drag the analogy out. So am I speaking okay, or do you want to add more? And I'm ready to continue if you're ready.
Carol has a question.
Carol, please.
A contribution for Brian's problem. There are experimental systems on the market that recycle the methane from all those cows. So, if the farmer had
They wear diapers or what?
no,
What catches the methane? And a lot of it comes from their burps.
Yeah, it's you have to, I can't say hermetically seal, but you have to close the barn in so that
Yes.
you can control the inflow and you can control the outflow, and it'll be methane. And if all you do with the methane and the carbon dioxide is feed it into the next stage to manage and bacteria, mox nix kind of, that's my philosophy.
You don't catch the methane from the cows in the
Yeah.
field.
And when you auger it in a shrouded methane, and consider front to back from the cow to the plastic at the back end, that it's a closed system. So with that, then the lagoon is one of the products we support, and it has let's see, I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, so here's the farmer data product. One of the things we get from the farmer is statistics. We get the MPCA data field sales reports, how many animal units being a ton, how many animal units of cows, pigs, chickens, geese, you name it, anything that can be put into a herd or a flock and fed in a concentrated feedlot manner is in the feedlot database. And so that's what I'm starting with. And from that, I can custom craft survey results to say, hey, I see that you raise buffalo and you raise pigs. Would you like to talk with us about, mixing those two manures? Sure. Sorry, don't mean to say, so there's, you can use tiger census data, population data, and see demographics. I'm a big one on saying that when in the final embodiment of anything that builds these machines, you have to put something that deals with the workforce, a reality solution. I don't talk about it here, I talk about it elsewhere, but you have to deal with the workforce fairly. And in my estimation, you have to give them a share of what you produce. That's kind of my starting position anyway. We'll see what investors have to say about that, I guess. So the one thing that's kind of missing is the county topographic elevation maps. The reason we want to collect those from the county is when we're measuring the floodplain, what's the probability that in 100-year flood that your lagoon is going to get flooded out? Well, we need to know elevations, and you might have to elevate your lagoon to just to keep out of it. If weather trends towards flooding continue year after year, it might become necessary. And so that's the elevation. And also for farm planning, you want to not have runoff phosphates and stuff going into surface water. And so you following the sculpture of the land, using HDPE dams and dikes and all of that where you need it, you can control your water flow. So those are just a part of a future part of the vision. I have what I call the CAR awards and rewards. What I do throughout the system is I create little corners where I ask questions and say, thank you for answering those questions. Here's a CAR reward.
David has a question.
Oh, David, yes, please. Do you need me to move back? Go ahead, please.
David, you're muted.
Oh, his hand was up.
Yeah.
No, the question I was wanting to ask is whether you had an approximation of what the weight and volume of plastic that you might expect out of your machine if you're talking about the size of the lagoon is to be handling 1,000 pigs.
Okay, that brings me to, if I may, good lead in. Why Martin County, Minnesota? So why did I choose that? And remember also, by the way, this is again a model that I put together, which is just a model. It mixes some realities that are in my brain, but it's a model. And so what I did in my mind is I said, okay, knowing the volume of manure produced in the United States, knowing that Martin County itself is number 6 in the nation in terms of the number of pigs, knowing that I wanted a Minnesota starting place, I said, okay, I'm going to start with Martin County. And so Martin County has 800 some thousand pigs. And I said, okay, so let's look at, and I did a transportation map, and I said, so if you go pick it up with regular gas hauling trucks, you just send out a fleet of them, you haul gas yesterday, you haul manure today. sending them out, what would it cost? I know what it would cost, $75,000 a day, if I remember the number. And so that's one way to bring the humidity, the moisture into a central place. And so I costed out a central solution. And so for 3 million pigs in Martin County, and its 7 county surrounding region, meaning a hexagon with 6 surrounding counties, most of them in Minnesota, 2, I think, of them in Iowa. And so those extra counties bring the total of those 7 counties up to 3 million pigs in Martin County, 7-county region. So that's what I'm dealing with. 3 million pigs in Minnesota and Iowa SAM, service area market, times 10 pounds of manure per pig per day, times 0.05% carbon equals 1,500,000 pounds carbon per day removed from manure. Divided by 2,000 pounds per ton. I don't use metric tons anywhere because we live in the USA, is 750 tons per day of carbon, 273,750 tons per year. And so the question becomes, with that kind of a volume of carbon, what do we do with it?
Lyno, just one correction. You mean 5%, not 0.05%.
Did I do that math wrong?
Yeah, it's either 0.05 or 5%. They're the same thing.
It's no, it is, the water is 90%.
0.05%.
Yeah, the water is 90% and the carbon is about 5% of
Right.
that. And so if I did the math wrong, then I have to go back to ground zero with my numbers. But that's where it comes from.
Assuming that what you really mean is 5% carbon, then your numbers are right, but 0.05, they'd be wrong.
Yeah, it's 5% carbon of one pound of solids from 10 pounds of liquid manure. With the water gone, it's 1 pound of solids, and from that it's 5%. But anyway, if anybody wants to double check that, boy, I sure would like to know, because that would be excruciatingly embarrassing to have dropped a decimal point or added one. So under the premise that the main thread of what I'm doing is still legit, and I'll report back if that's wrong. So the next question that anyone thinking about this is, okay, I kind of get what's going on, and I hope that's basically true. And so the 3 million pigs, the 7-county waste region, 8 pounds per gallon of pig manure, 15,000 tons, that's 255 million gallons, which is important in a minute. And then I went down and I looked at and I said, okay, what's the largest sewage treatment plant in the USA? And so DC's Blue Plains Advanced Water Treatment Plant on an average day treats close to 300 million gallons. And I went, 300 million gallons, really? Well, we're at 255. So that means that the humans living in Washington, D.C. produce slightly more manure than 3 million pigs in Martin County, Minnesota region. That's my bit of humor. So the prototype is a fundamental question. It's on a laboratory bench now. There's some patent claims for it. I redid the math at 1,000 pigs, 100,000 and 3 million, just for a person to put into their mind. It's 5 ton per day for 1,000 pigs. My original model used 1,200 pigs. It was 6 ton a day, and I like the math being 5 instead of 6. So that's why I dropped it. So here now is a rest slide. And what I'm going to say is, let's give it a pause for some questions in a minute. And this is kind of a keynote of my thinking. And then we'll finish the slide deck after I need to take a few minute break, 3 or 4. So what's happening next? We've talked about kind of the past. We've talked about the current plans. What happens next? And so I start with one of my key phrases. we all have an active imagination. And my summary of that is it's all imaginary till it's real. If you know, that basically true. Sometimes things exogenously appear, but basically you think about them. Hopefully you think about them before you do them anyway. And then, you know, speaking good words, doing good things, that's what better happen next. And you know, a lot of the stuff that goes on, you know, if a person says, I'm gonna ask myself the question, does this need to be said now? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said at all? And just, you know, and I try to be respectful of my own message. And so now on the right side, it's all imaginary. So I imagine what I call HDPE plastic world. And from that world, we'll spin off HDPE housing and we'll provide homeless housing at $1 a pound for the housing. And it takes 24 tons of housing to build a livable homeless house. And so that's $24,000 worth of plastic that can build a habitation. And that's in the model. So with that, I'm gonna just step away and I'm gonna try to turn off. No, I'm just gonna step away. Sorry.
Tom Walsh has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I'm just wondering who this Oliver is that you're quoting on.
Oh, sorry. He's my father. He came out of the Second World War, went to Caltech before, Stanford after, studied, listened to all the lectures of all the greats at those two colleges, and was my mentor in my life. If I ever had a question, I could ask him. And he talked about coal to oil instead of oil from the Middle East. That was one of his messages. And he said, you know, it was after Al Gore's speech. He said, you know, if people care about carbon dioxide, they need to just feed it to methanogen bacteria. It eats carbon dioxide and produces methane. And so that was his summary. So thank you for asking. I didn't realize I hadn't introduced him. I'm going to step away if I may. I'll let everybody else step away and I'll leave my camera on. Thank you.
Well, while we're waiting, do we have any discussion about what's been said so far?
Well, I really thought, Tom, your point was very, very poignant in that we need to think forward, and certainly young people that are coming up and who are going to have to make some of these decisions are not interested in eating a lot of meat. I mean, they're the younger generation's just not interested in keeping the status quo of the amount of demand that there has. So I think your point of it decreasing in the future is really important. And it seems to me that if he were to redo these slides around plastics, he'd get so much more traction. I mean, I don't, you know, I just don't, I think that working with farmers is a really tough nut to crack at this point. I don't know. I don't know the research in terms of, you know, are farmers really wanting to find better ways, or do we need to deal with the plastics problem, which is huge? I mean, like that's everybody knows the plastics problem is gotten out of hand. And
I'm back in the conversation. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
we're just yeah,
Go
we're just
ahead.
talking about, I was just backing Tom's thoughts about instead of leading with pig manure, you might want to lead with plastic.
Yes, and I've thought of those things, and basically if I can raise enough capital, what I will do is I will make a splash in the municipal waste market by saying you've got a truckload, boatloads of polyethylene going, I think, to China for processing or wherever they send it. All this insane, irrational, will pour so much energy into it. And I say, let Carbonic put one of its biomass processors right on your factory. We'll just input it at one end and we'll produce HDPE, or we can produce methane. we can produce literally any hydrocarbon out of the chemistry palette of hydrocarbons if we mix in stuff. And so do it in spots, small doses. You know, if you need 5 machines to handle different kinds of plastic, get 5 machines, because gasification is gasification. And as long as you can turn chemicals like chlorine and fluorine and bromine and things like that into salts and sands and stuff, you have only those to deal with, the solids. So anyway, may I proceed, or is there more questions?
There's a couple questions, David.
Go
and
ahead, please. Yes.
Then Tom. David?
It strikes me that that's an awful lot of manure. What's the value of the HTTP that you're expecting to output from a machine?
It's let's see, I think I can pull that number out. It's I think it's in a different slide deck. It's $1 a pound into a fixed market is what I want, with the farmers doing their part to keep the price fixed so that they benefit from just a predictable price. The production price is, I calculated it at a BTU level, which is unfair because it doesn't take the efficiencies into mind. And I can't remember the answer to the question about I know that it's $1 a pound, and I believe it produces, it's 6 moles. So I could do the math, and I'm not sure I have it available. If I may beg off for the moment, I may remember it. May I do that? And is
Sure.
there another question?
How much volume are you talking about with a pound of HTTP plastic? Is that
Oh,
a-
it's about 3 cubic inches. And when it's expanded, it's 8 cubic feet, I believe, when the HDPE is expanded to atmospheric temperature. I believe it's 8 cubic feet from 3 cubic inches. If that helps, is 1 pound.
Well, when you expanded, plastic is basically a foam then?
Oh, no, that I'm just saying, if you took the atoms and said, okay, I'm going to burn this HDPE, produce pure carbon dioxide, what volume of carbon dioxide would you
Okay.
get? And it's
Yeah.
like 8 cubic feet. And so in my mind, I reverse it and say, okay, well, if you collapsed it, simple math, that's
No,
what
the number I was looking for then was the 3 cubic inches.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, you're welcome. It takes me a
Tom,
while. Go ahead. Tom, you had one?
Yeah, I had another question about this HDPE plastic.
Yes.
How is it better than other plastics? Is it biodegradable? Is it,
It's
one of
pure,
these-
it's pure
it-
carbon and hydrogen. It's the first of the ethane, butane, propane. It's the simplest hydrocarbon in a plastic form. It's just chains of hydrogen and oxygen strung together. And it's very stretchable. You can pull a plastic bag, HDPE bag, and it'll stretch. All of those characteristics are in the polyethylene. High density is only one variety. I'm answering too many questions. Please ask. me.
Yeah, I guess if it's very stretchable, how does that make it a good material for habitation?
Well, that's if you use low density polyethylene. I was talking about the general chemical polyethylene. What is it? CH3. I can't remember even now. I could look it up. Hey, if anybody wants to look on the internet and say, give me an answer to something I stumble over, I don't mind a bit. If I didn't write it down here, I'm confusing myself. So let me step, if I may.
We have We have a couple more questions.
Oh, please ask away. I'll do the best I can. Go ahead.
Diane and then Carol.
Okay, Diane.
By the way, it's Diana.
Diana, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, it's okay. I'm just for the record.
Alright.
Is methane, if people are using propane, can
Mhm.
methane be put in those propane tanks?
Yeah, I don't know, and I would say, my off the cuff response would be probably no, because every bit of that industry is extraordinarily regulated because it's so dangerous. And so maybe gas fittings, a plumber would know for sure, but I wouldn't even want to hazard something that would make a statement. But my assumption would be probably no, because they're different temperatures or pressures that they're stored at. Could look on the internet and answer that probably.
So it's not a market, then methane cannot be marketed
Oh,
to
yeah.
people who want to camp, right? Like propane is in a 1 pound thing and it fits into
Oh.
these stoves. Like, can methane be handled such as similar to propane, I guess?
In the following thing, I did a lot of research on the internet, and I found all kinds of people who were taking cow dung, putting it in a can, letting it ferment, and producing flames that they could use to heat their cooking. And so they're just using cow dung and the process of heating with it, which produces methane and burns it.
Methane is commonly called natural gas.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
Our system.
Mhm.
If
Carol.
of
Yeah.
put methane in a propane tank, probably. We make liquefied natural gas and ship it around in big tanker trucks, in tanker boats. That's what the LNG depots over in Europe are all about.
Mhm.
Carol.
Yeah. Okay, if we are looking at doing good for the environment,
Mhm.
we cannot look at methane as an end product. You know, it's
Mhm.
worse. It's worse than CO2. I mean, I'm sorry, for Oliver's notion, but
Yeah. Well,
if CO2 concerns you, you cannot turn it into methane because that's worse.
methane can be combusted into carbon dioxide. Go ahead, please.
Now your HDPE plastic, producing that kind of plastic instead of producing plastic from fossil fuels, does wonderful things for the environment.
Mhm.
So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand kind of the discussion on both sides. And in the big equation, what I do is I say, we need to sequester carbon. That's the end game in my mind. And we need to capture all of the carbon dioxide out of industry, out of power plants, and
Yep.
feed it in with carbon to produce, to capture it. And I think that we're going to do all of those things. It's just a natural. And so
Right.
we'll be eating carbon dioxide in the sense that we're not putting it into the atmosphere.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if your end product of sucking CO2 out of the atmosphere is methane, that's not a good thing for the environment.
Mhm. And
But
right,
if
go
your
ahead.
end product is plastic, that is a good thing for the environment.
Right,
Oh.
so if you're producing burnable fuels, you're just putting the CO2 back.
Right.
into the
And
environment.
you're destined to, because, you know, you can store it and ship it and everything, but you're not going to keep it for 100 years.
Right. And to the extent that it gets loose into the environment, it's even worse than if you burn it.
Yes. Yeah, 25 times worse.
So if you go back to your main purpose of this, I think you have to eliminate the methane as a product.
Yeah,
Could
much why
respond
use
to
it
that
in-
statement, Carol?
What?
Could I respond to that?
Oh,
Well,
sure.
Yes.
Doug Shoemaker's had his hand up for quite a while.
It's just a kind of a sideways question for Lionel. Lionel, are you familiar with the Hobenshield farm up at Princeton? They've been using an anaerobic digester for a number of years up there with cow manure and producing energy, selling back electricity. And are you familiar with that group?
I'm not, but that's exemplary. Please proceed.
I think that's the process I was talking about earlier.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, I would like to hear David's contribution to what we were talking about earlier, because I think it would be significant.
I was just going to say that it's a little more complicated than that. And it's really going to depend on the costs, I think,
Uh-huh.
because methane can be put through a, oh, come on, what is it? Fuel cell and turned into electricity, with the results being CO2 and water. So if you're talking about a biomethane, as Linus' process would be, essentially you'd be adding more bio CO2 rather than fossil fuel CO2. And of course,
Okay,
the amount of that that's involved at present is already a pretty significant amount. The problem we've got is that we're turning fossil fuel CO2 into we're releasing it in the atmosphere and unbalancing the system. The system's gotten along fine without us until the last 200 years. It's just the last 200 years has been a real strain, a real shock, if you will.
okay, so you're suggesting that they take the methane and feed it to a biofuel?
No,
No?
I'm suggesting that when you look at this as a systems, from a systems point of view, it's going to depend on what the costs are to run the digester, to turn the manure into whichever, the plastic or the
Biogas.
methane. The
Yeah.
methane is going to be basically a biologically sourced methane. So that doesn't add more or take more out of the system than's already there. Whereas when we mine fossil fuels and burn them, we're adding more carbon to the system. Okay? Carbon that feeds the animals is coming out of the atmosphere. So that's part of the carbon cycle that's already running. If you follow me?
Gotcha.
So this process isn't really adding extra carbon to the system. When we burn fossil fuels, we're adding extra carbon to the system. Do you follow my distinction?
Right, we're not really adding it to the system if you consider the whole world the system, but we're desequestering it, you might say.
Yeah.
We're freeing it into the water and the air.
And if you were to use that methane through a fuel cell, you would get electricity out of it. You would
Mhm.
get water out of it, and you would get the CO2 that then gets absorbed by the plants to feed the animals to make more manure. That's the carbon cycle that the world already has running.
Right.
And by the way, as a side note, when you've got cows out in the field, the grass has microorganisms in it that absorb the methane and change it to CO2 and sugars to feed the grass. And so you don't have to have a hermetically sealed barn.
Ah,
Okay, but still, I think if you're thinking in terms of climate change, basically, that if you take that methane and put it in a fuel cell and get out electricity and water and somehow manage to sequester the CO2 that you get out.
It's much easier to sequester from a
Yeah.
fuel cell.
Yes, that's great. But if you're just burning the methane, that's getting it into the atmosphere as opposed to the
Yep, that's true.
as opposed to it's being munched by the cows.
Well, but
And
it's going to end up munched by the cows.
yes, but our current imbalance is too many greenhouse gases in the atmosphere.
I think we should get back to our presentation.
Yeah.
okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and move to the next slide. So what I've got now is I've got some education slides, and I'll just leave them up. They're FYI, and I'm.
And it looks like you're addressing our questions, so that's great.
Yeah. Yes. And
Lean in and read the fine print.
What's that?
I'm going to lean in and read the fine print.
Yeah, I apologize that some of this is pretty small. So this is just some attempted artwork and trying to show the relative percentages. All of my artwork, by the way, is referred to if it's commercial, and if it's government or it's Google, then I look and make sure it's cool, and I'll copy paste, and I try to edit stuff anyway. So I'm trying to be respectful of other people's work. So there, I'll go to the next slide then, the 4 main contributors. And here now is a little bit more in depth about favoring microbiological solutions. And it has, I'm going to let you just kind of skim it. It's easier than me trying to read it. The one that I called attention to, the buffering capacity of ammonia nitrogen. So I have this theory that maybe if you set up the right process, you can use that capability of buffering nitrogen to produce ammonia without doing anything. You're not going to destroy the carbon. You might need special bacteria or something, but going after this ammonia is big on my list. So I'll let you continue to read it. I don't know some of that, Sriki Kohli, we've heard of some of that.
Warren Poole has a question while you're reading.
Oh, yes, please help. Thank you.
Well, just a comment, if you put your cursor over presenter view on that line below the slideshow where it says you have slideshow, if you click on that, then it'll give you, see over to the left more, there
Okay.
you go. Click on that.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. No, that did a funky thing here. Yeah, if I could
Is-
separate out that script, let me leave it. I'm looking for maximum
Okay.
size.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
for the
okay, thank you.
suggestion.
All right. Thank you
Yeah.
for doing that.
Yeah. So microbiological solutions and other just familiar stuff and some unfamiliar. Some I could explain, some of that I couldn't. So here now is my question about anaerobic digestion. It has a little side note about where methane comes from, definitely worth processing. And so this is talking about pig manure being a poor substrate for biogas because of excessive nitrogen. Well, nitrogen is interesting because nitrogen is a good nutrient. And so what do you want to do with nitrogen? You want to turn it into ammonia. That's my thinking about the best thing to do to engineer that. And so what I'm talking about is adding to the substrate. So you have pig manure. What else are you going to have? Well, you're going to have the livestock manure waste of all things potentially on your farm, bedding waste, carbon harvest waste, cellulose products like wood, fast uptake. Hemp and grasses are among the fastest. Hemp is like 4 times the carbon uptake of a dense oak forest, which is a good measure of its carbon uptake. Let's see, recycled HDPE, I mentioned that. If anybody needs me to stay put, please speak. Any questions or I'll turn.
Warren has a question,
Warren, please.
unless that's his,
I didn't lower my hand.
okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I'll proceed. Okay, ammonia and biogas. And here now is talking about processes that produce methane, methane and carbon dioxide, and hydrogen and carbon dioxide. And I'm working with the methane and carbon dioxide pathway in my own thinking, but I'm interested in the hydrogen carbon dioxide because that's the part of the syngas route of producing hydrogen and carbon monoxide. And so I scratch my head and wonder, but haven't researched it much. So again, I'm reinforcing upper right there, poor substrate, and it may result in toxic levels of ammonia. And so I'm saying, well, so it's not going to kill its own bacteria, so it's going to kill the downstream. Maybe that's okay. It's just adding carbon material unless it multiplies. So just material research questions that we're going to put into beakers and put into gallon jugs and just do some experimentation. So one of the things that goes on is reactors have a time that they need to spend for their process to work. And so I'll let you read that. This came out of an interesting study out of, I believe it was India, where they did a huge study of all of the chemistry of mixing cow and pig manure ratios, production ratios, all of that stuff, and found that the mixture was well suited. So that's part of the answer then maybe for the pig farm solution is, instead of adding another pig barn, maybe add a cattle barn where you can get cattle manure and add it in. So pig manure ammonia rich. So I'm talk about that again. And through adaptation, anaerobic has been shown to increase tolerance to ammonia. So through our material research, maybe we'll discover something. Any questions here or I'll change?
Yeah, I have one.
Well,
Okay.
It would seem to me that the process to produce hydrogen and carbon dioxide rather than methane and carbon dioxide can be more beneficial. Because hydrogen is a great fuel.
Yes.
Yeah, you burn it with oxygen and create a lot of energy.
Yeah, well, and the process, the water that you take water in, and with the iron catalyst, you shift the hydrogen, it produces carbon monoxide, and that makes syngas, and syngas is a base, like methane is a base carrier gas for the process, synthesis gas, if you will. This is synthesis gas with hydrogen carbon monoxide. And again, the entire chemical industry opens to you. All of the energy industries open to you, electricity. It's all open to you, as you say, on the hydrogen side too. And so there's no reason that I'm aware of that a process can't produce both. And go ahead.
The hydrogen can be used for fuel cells for vehicles, for example.
Yeah, and that actually creates if I remember right, because you've taken the carbon, you get one carbon credit, and because you've stored it as electricity, you get a second one. So my understanding is you double your carbon credits, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, yes, and my other point is producing nitrogen can be beneficial too, because that can be used to make fertilizer.
Yes. Yep. Ammonia is the target there. Producing ammonia is used for ammonia fertilizer. So, yep, thank you. Let me, any other question, or I'll proceed?
Carol,
Carol, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I just want to thank Lyno here because this is a perfect detailed answer to my original question about whether you needed to treat pig manure and cow manure differently.
Oh,
This
thank you.
is in gorgeous detail exactly what I wanted to know. So
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So next slide, we're getting close to the end. What this is doing now is this is introducing the temperature gradient. And we're going to see that as we raise the temperature, we bring in this liquid mass, we extract its methane, biogas, all of that, any of the gases, we extract them, and then we move it up the temperature change. And so we go from 15 degrees to 45 degrees centigrade, somewhere in that range. Got to watch the pH, maintained neutral or somewhere very close, narrow range has to be monitored and adjusted. So the first temperature where we start to reach an action, and it's presumed that the issue of water, by the time we reach 100 degrees centigrade, about 108 or thereabouts, we've driven all the water or the moisture out of the manure, leaving leaving only solids. And so now what we're going to do is take those solids and start to raise them. Like if we were to put them in a barbecue grill and just lay them on a grill, we would raise the temperature to 400, 500, 600 degrees. We could produce charcoal that way if we wanted to. It's a matter of raising the temperature. And so we're going to start with torrefaction is, and by the way, my pronunciation of some of these words may not be correct. Starts in at around in an inert or nitrogen atmosphere, and what it does is it works at 1 atmospheric pressure, which is good. Temperature range 200 to 300 degrees, 100 degrees centigrade. Water's long gone now. May stay in the temperature for several hours, producing bio oils and all kinds of carbon kinds of products that are dependent on temperature range. And I don't get into the details of those, but anything that says bio, oil, biofuel, biogas, anything with bio in it is probably a part of the potential process. So 500 to 800 producing biochars, and the pyrolysis picks up from about 400 to 800 in an oxygen-free atmosphere, anaerobic, and a very small amount of oxygen is introduced, heavily controlled, to produce biochar. And so if your end game is biochar, then you're going to be in that range, 800 degrees, with heavily controlled oxygen completing a combustion of the carbon material, not completing it, just turning it into char. And so that's up the scale. The next step is, and let me see on the left, I input various products and output various products. I didn't go into them. I'll let you read them there, here. So now I'm going up the scale. I put in the water, the steam, the potentially superheated steam. I'm not proposing that. It requires a lot of specialized equipment, and it can be relatively dangerous. And so I'm not proposing anything that uses high pressure anything, unless it's properly contained in chemical engineer designed equipment. So that's, you can count on that. So now we're in the 400 to 800 oxygen free, and now we can go to up to 1,000 degrees, up to 1,200 degrees, and we can increase the throughput, and we can produce high carbon conversion efficiencies up to 98, 99%. What that means is we've fully gasified. Sorry, I'm going to get rid of that call, meaning that we fully gasified the material, and now we can produce, along the way, we can produce graphene. I think everybody's heard of that. Two-dimensional sheets of carbon atoms that can have mix-ins of various type for various properties. We can produce that if we want. Takes way specialized processing, but a farmer might say, I'll buy a graphene production process for whatever reason they would want to, or a central process could do it. At the scale of, by the way, back to Martin County for just a moment, 10 ton an hour of production capacity is sufficient, with 6 units of that capacity doing 500,000 ton each, can get 3 million ton done in a day, if I remember the math correctly. So sorry, that just popped in my head. Various kinds of gasifiers, exit temperature. When we're producing polyethylene, we have to raise the temperature up to, with catalyst, maybe 1,000 degrees centigrade, and then the ethane gas becomes ethylene, and then it has to be chilled down. And it has to be chilled down to about 300 or so degrees when it starts to solidify. And so we're looking for as rapid a temperature drop as we can. And so what we'll do is we'll probably drop it into water, produce steam at the back end, which will be clean because it will be temperature derived steam only, and maybe use it in the process. But we have to cool it fast and put it into extruders and get it out of the system. And that's happening in the 300 degree range. I don't talk about extrusion here, I don't believe, but it's how we get the plastic out. So now I'll be quick here. Notes regarding forward-looking statements. I'm putting that in here, even though this is not a solicitation, because this talks about forward-looking statements, and I'm talking about futures. I'm talking about an industry that I want to move into, and I think there's room for thousands of companies to move in and say, this idea of we eliminate greenhouse gas, we can go surround a methane leaking well and put a polycarbonate bubble over it and collect all the oil and gas that's coming out of that well, and just fanciful things. You can't make it up fast enough. So that's that one. And then here's my closing questions. And here again is the waste.carbonic.live. If
We
you
didn't
want
get a
around.
chance to read those
Sorry.
earlier.
Go ahead.
The next slide. We need to
Oh,
be
the
able-
next slide. Okay, this one.
Yes.
Yes. So this picks up and this talks about theoretically, and this is all based on analysis of the open market. So, and this is the revenue. So this is taken into account costs. And I believe that this fits, I think, with either model, either the liquid transport model or the gasify it on site, turn it into biochar on site and haul the biochar, leaving 90% of the water behind. Sorry, I don't know, but here's the questions, and I'll read them for the listening audience at least. Does Carbonic have a clear need for capital? Yeah, we need a prototype on a lab bench and at scale. And stop me with each question if you have an interjection. Is the business model easy to understand that demonstrates how it makes money? These are what investors are going to ask, investment questions. And what we're telling them is the answer to that is going to be yes, because we're building a supply chain linking farm, hauler, and processor. And whether we link it with dry biochar or liquid is a choice. A county might say, no, we don't want those kind of operations on the farm. We want them centralized for whatever reason, then they might get it. Is the business model easy to understand, demonstrate how it makes money? I did the best I could with the service area market. What problem is the Carbonic solving? Greenhouse gas elimination. What are people doing right at this time? Using anaerobic digestion, using tarps and better biogas recovery. Again, this is trying to present a balance. What unfair competitive advantage or unmet need have you discovered? Dependencies on fossil fuel seems obvious to me. And that HDPE sequesterability is not discussed much. And I mean like near zero in my research. It's just not a topic. And its ability to sequester carbon for centuries in building materials of all things is just not discussed. It boggles my mind. It honestly does. But anyway, that's just an observation. So what's your plan to get people to change their behavior to do it your way? Understand people's behavior through forms, polls, and surveys. When does Carbonic break even? Fortunately, the supply chain is built region by region based on client form data input. That means we're not taking on a nationwide program. We're taking on as we can get interest and get capital, we're going to target a market and go in and do the best we can to move it. Go ahead, Tom, or whoever else is first.
Okay, if you could go back to slide 22, a couple slides before this.
22, okay.
Yeah. No, you had it there. The previous one. Yeah. This process seems to involve, it's pretty energy intensive, requires a lot of energy to do all this heating. And I'm wondering if you have any kind of closed process to produce this heat, or if you're going to be burning fossil fuels to produce it.
No, we'll be burning the methane that we generate. There will be no fossil fuels anywhere in the process. That's our goal. And so everything will be, renewable in some sense, word-wise, the narrative. It'll be renewable in some sense because it comes from biomass sources like HDPE, like whatever.
Okay.
Thank you. So let's go back. So now let's open it. We've got plenty of time. And I'm open to anywhere we want to go. My prepared material is done. So I'll turn it over to you, Brian, to just wind us through to the end and ask any questions and look stuff up on the internet if you're interested, and fill out the form if you would. And I'm going to see if I can get my form to show by reducing this screen. Reduce. And now I'm going to try to drag my form over onto this screen. There's my form. Okay. So this is what I'm inviting people to fill in. Car 78, that's his project control number. And so a first and a last name. And what I'm doing, you know, everybody's talking about privacy and, oh, you can't gather data unless you have a privacy policy and all of that. I'm simplifying all of that because if I can find the remotest issue where privacy might be of concern, I address it with the data. You know, you want to know what your name is being used for. It doesn't have an asterisk. Don't fill it in if you're uncomfortable. And it's required for our fraud detection system. So if you want to be able to say, be asked, what's your first name? You know, you're known by your email address. What's your first name? And you can't reply your first name. Whoops. And so it's just a cross-checking security system, just laying in there. And also for mail lists, the mailing list campaign, preferred name, nickname, real email address, that has to last because I've got to be in communication with you. What's your farm name, zip code, your background, additional background, what are you farming now? And then we're asking, you know, just opinion questions, just, you know, empty it, because this is here for your elucidation and the elucidation of those who process information that's anonymized. And so that's one of our goals is that we collect your data, but, you know, you can sell it if you want to, you know, sell it to a poll. If you like cornflakes and you want to sell to a big mill who wants to know everything about people who like cornflakes, why, you just sell it. If you can find a buyer, you can sell your data. So those kind of things. So I'm just going to scroll slow enough that you can read the words. You can certainly go to waste.carbonic.live /car 0078 regulatory variables. That's good. Introducing some explanation or on a scale from feral to concentrated animal feeding operation. How'd you describe your farm? And so we're looking for them to tell us, do they concentrate cattle in a barn, you know, a dairy barn? Is that concentrated or not? It's an animal feed operation. Don't know. They haven't done the research, but they'll be telling us. How's it regulated? What's the regulation, the pain threshold?
First batch of cookies.
Say again, please. Oh, okay.
That was background.
Oh, okay. Do you ever sell, give away, or trade your manure? Why not? A farmer says, hey, gardeners in you know, I'm on the edge of your city. If you want a ton of manure delivered in 50-pound bags, I can deliver that to you, and I'll deliver it on this day, and you can prepare for it, and it'll be in your driveway. And so there's a price for that, and a little bit of custom processing. I think that there's whole businesses, new businesses that almost haven't been imagined that are going to fall out in people's imaginations as they engage with the problem and understand, you know, it's all manure.
I know.
So go ahead, please, with any questions.
This is Brian. I have a question or comment. I have a friend, farms down in southern Minnesota. They were raising pigs, and I'm talking about 10 years ago now. And they said whenever they tried or had to or wanted to increase their pig population that they wanted to raise, they had to show that there were enough farmers who wanted to use the pig manure that they produced for fertilizer before they would let them increase the number of
Mhm.
pigs that they could grow. Is that still true, or is that gone? by?
Yes, very heavily regulated. You can't, your own property, you have to be able to dispose of it or move it. And so the problem of dewatering that we face is, what do you do with 90% water? And I'm of a mind that it may be cheaper cost-wise to truck it to a central facility, because then you're just removing it from the farms in its entirety, the fluid. And then that raises other issues. But so that's kind of the equation of the water. And so go ahead, refine your question if you have a follow-up.
Nope, that was all.
Okay.
Warren Poole has his hand up.
Okay, Warren,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, and what was just brought up, transporting water is really expensive, just like
Yes.
transporting other agricultural products.
Yes.
Really what this boils down to, and where you have to really focus to interest investors, is the energy balance of all this. And Tom brought up the real question there.
Yes.
The costs of energy are huge for some of these processes. And you can say that you're producing enough methane to do all that, but yet that's the energy balance that you have to
Yes.
determine.
Yes.
That's all.
And my very simplistic and naive answer would be, the microbiology has to be as big as necessary if we were to take on the King power plant, coal, electricity. It might take 1,000 acres of land, a section of land, to have enough biology to eat that amount of carbon dioxide. That may be one answer. There may be 100 others, that will come with the problem. I believe will come answers to scale, and maybe the scale is too big, and maybe it needs to be reduced, and we need to produce electricity at the farm level. Go ahead, Warren. I think and Tom, you're next.
Okay, just to comment on this questionnaire that you have. It's very, very long. I can't imagine anyone wanting to fill it out.
Uh-huh.
So it's a lot of interesting information that I'm sure would be useful to you, but I'm not sure if anyone would want to answer all these questions.
Sure. And what this is this is the template of the master list of questions. And what I'll do is I'll find from a farm, I'll say, do you use ammonium nitrate? And they'll say yes. And so I'll bring up another form that'll say, well, how do you produce your ammonia? Have you ever had accidents? Whatever they want to say. There's no, because they're anonymous. And so now I've got the fertilizer component. Do you have a lagoon? Yes, I do. Well, if we could show up and haul all of your liquid waste and all of your solid waste away, would you give it to us? And if they say yes, we'll go, oh, okay, well, there's money in the sludge in terms of fertilizer, and there's money in the manure in terms of carbon and other things. And so there's an equation in there somewhere that fits economically, even if we have to buy methane on the open market to make the deal. It might be worth doing, because there's a part of me that says, and this is not dismissive, it doesn't matter how much it costs, because the end game is we have to sequester somewhere, and this is the best end game we've got by far. And if it takes extra energy to get it there, what are the alternatives? Put it into the ground and let it go back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide over decades, and just kick the can down the road? Or do we want a real solution? Are we going to bury it geologically and spend all of that energy? If you want a comparative cost, ask those questions. Some people are talking about pumping it underground. How much does that cost? That's huge energy. And so when you look at the alternatives and do an energy cost comparison, which I've not done, and your goal is to sequester, that's your goal. Your goal is not to produce intermediate carrier products, but to sequester. what's your available answers? And HDPE is one of them. Other exotic plastics are too. Black plastic, carbon plastic is ideal for a whole range of things. And so you just build the products that you need. And mixing in carbon black, you get extra chemical property, you get extra properties, electrostatic properties, electrical transmission properties, RFID field transmission properties, and UV protection properties, and strength properties. And so when you start mixing in the carbon black that you're producing in small quantities purified, you're totally changing the characteristics of HDPE and fitting entire new markets. I believe entrepreneurs are going to come alive in this market. So I'm running on. Any other questions?
So back to this questionnaire. These are all the leaves on the branches of a logic tree that you'll be presenting them online. So they'll be following down certain branches and not dealing with all these questions.
Yeah, exactly right. They'll be following, if they want to talk about what it is to be a farmer in terms of managing your household budget. I'll have, because they're anonymous, they can say, meat sales kills us. We don't make enough. Well, that's good to know. That's the bigger problem. If we said, do we care more about meat sales or not, or versus an alternative, and they'll care about meat sales because that's one of their constraints on income. And cost of fertilizer. Which would you prefer? More expensive fertilizer, or less expensive fertilizer, or less expensive meat? Ask balancing questions. How do you trade those off? Every farmer would have their own kind of opinion, and where would the numbers come down? I want to share them with the Department of Agriculture, because it's the truth. It's the truth as best it can be cleansed and anonymized. It's the truth. How do you want to vote? Anonymized truth. Take the poll system and tell a politician, if you violate what the poll says in your district, you're looking to get creamed in the election, because here's what your people say.
Tom Trice has his hand up.
Go ahead, Tom. I love it. Love the questions.
I'm sorry to be late to your presentation. I find this topic endlessly fascinating and have since the 1970s. There's a British sitcom variously called The Good Life or The Good Neighbors.
Yes.
where a person living in a suburb of London does this. He converts his front and backyards into farm plots and grows pigs, gathers manure, converts it to methane to run their gas stove. By the end of the series, they are actually installing an air conditioner for themselves, not for the pigs.
Yes.
I spent many hours going down the rabbit hole of, if you can do it in this small scale,
yeah,
and the numbers certainly looked like it might be possible. It wasn't, they didn't go into great detail, of course, into this, except people were, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. But actually, if you actually sat down and run the numbers, maybe you could. You might need a bigger allotment than he had. And as the show goes on, he gets another allotment to grow things on. But America, the world is fascinated with the idea of the giant thing which is going to come along and save us. And maybe the solution to these problems is to have, instead of one giant thing, to have a million tiny things.
Mm-hmm.
each making their own mistakes, their own problems, and struggling on.
Yeah,
Because the problem, and it's a real problem, when you've got the one big thing, it's a behemoth.
exactly. Costs a
And,
lot.
and you can't control it.
Yeah,
You fervently demand that you can
yeah,
and proclaim, I can run this.
yeah.
Yeah, no, you can't.
And in the
You have
modern world,
no idea what you're doing, boss.
yeah. And in the modern world now, you become a strategic target. I love what you're
Yeah.
saying very much. I remember Small is Beautiful and stuff like that. I conceived of, designed the idea of a pig pen on top of a digester that you could put in your backyard, and 20 by 24 feet, you can run 3 pigs, which ultimately can be about 1,000 pounds of meat per year. And
Yes, that was a big
and
problem.
yeah, it was
The
owned.
pigs become your friends.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Well, there's that. No. Yeah, reminds me of the first time my daughter ate rabbit. Oh, it was a horrible experience.
It's Bunny.
Yeah,
My brother
exactly right.
raised,
Fluffy. So let me, I'll continue to scroll a little bit. Any other questions that are coming up?
not yet,
Okay, let's see here. And then this can be submitted, and I'll pick up all of the answers in the survey. If this is completed, I'll show you what I have. I have forms for identity. I'll show you my general question form. This is actually a fun one. Same heading. Is livestock manure a problem for you? Yes, not applicable, no. Would you be interested in having your farm's fresh manure hauled away each day? Would you be interested in having sludge removed from your lagoon and hauled away? Would you allow us to send you email messages? You know, and so a simple question like that, and an average person would say, if I had a lot of manure to deal with, why would I say anything but yes? So that's my form. Go ahead, Carol, I see, and anyone else.
I was just going to suggest that in answer to the nobody's going to fill out your questionnaire, that that you start with a smallish questionnaire, and then as they answer questions that become relevant, you know, like if they answer yes to do you have a lagoon, then you bring up all the lagoon related questions.
Exactly
That's
right.
what I was talking about, a logic tree. It has to be online.
Yes, that would help with Tom's objection, which is kind of true. I don't think anybody's going to fill out your whole long questionnaire.
Yeah. Yeah, and it comes in bits and pieces over time. And you know, at the end of the game, one of the things that's necessary is got to sell product or don't have money. And so, you know, got to test out the price and see if I can actually advertise I won't advertise it as a universal biomass solution, but it's because it's not. But I can advertise it as a livestock to whatever producer, whatever output they want, I suppose.
I think there you are really going in the right direction, because I feel that the only real answers to the climate change problem are going to come from utilizing the capitalist system. Rather than bucking it. I mean, long time ago, they used to encourage people to recycle their bottles, you know, I mean, at that time, it was glass bottles from pop and things. And, you know, it just never took off.
Mhm.
And when they took to paying for recycled bottles, everybody didn't take it up, but people who wanted a little money started going around and collecting bottles from their neighbors and friends and enemies and that sort of thing, and getting a little bit of money for it. And that worked beautifully.
Mhm.
And this is the kind of thing where you're trying to utilize human greed and the capitalist system and everything to go in the right direction. And I really appreciate that.
Mhm. Applying capitalism to ethical choice.
Well, or simply to efficiency.
Efficiency, yep,
You
yep,
know, sucking money in for
Yeah.
research, you know,
yes,
by return
Yeah.
on investment, that kind of thing.
exactly. Yeah, it's easy to spend other people's money.
Yep.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left, but if there are no more questions,
Any chit chat, any topic. I'm wrapped up. Thank you all for your patience with my fumbling around, and I hope that you found this to be a good example of a talk.
Thank you, Lionel. It was quite well done.
You're welcome, Brian.
Um,
Carol has her hand up again.
I'll take this break. Next week, we have Jason. Jason, do you know what you're going to talk about?
Jason.
He's coming.
I'm coming here. Hold on a second. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh yes. Yeah, no, I will have it posted here shortly.
Shortly means next Friday, or?
No,
No.
sooner would be better.
Be that way.
Do you have a topic that we can look forward to?
He went mute already. He doesn't want to talk.
Jason, do you have simply a topic that we can look forward to without posting anything?
Well, we do want to get it on Meetup so other people can see it too.
Yeah, well, yes, but I thought that might help a little.
I could put that on Meetup if I knew what it was.
Yeah. Well, maybe in the future, we should have the announcement at least a week before the meeting as a matter of process, so that we don't get balled up with last minute scramble. So maybe, what do you think? Just change our process in the future?
Well, Brian does do that.
Oh, okay. Then
I
he'll
put him in as-
receive the call. Okay.
I put them in as soon as I get the information, but it's sometimes very hard to get any information out of Jason.
Well, he's not the only one.
No,
No, but he
No,
does.
I'll confess to being late on times.
So yeah, we do want to get, as soon as you know what your topic is, get it
Yeah.
posted
He doesn't want to
on
talk
that
to us anymore.
appropriate week and Meetup. You can add
So
more
anyway,
detail later.
Tom Trice, I have you on for the 25th of March.
yes, the
Okay.
future of rural America.
Okay, Carol, your hand is up. Do you have another question?
I simply want to make the comment that this is one of the best futures presentations I have seen.
Mhm.
Really, really good. And just to pin down some of the goodnesses, numbers, you got numbers in there. You know, where applicable, you got percentages and mathematics and okay, really, really good presentation, really good detail.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed by this. You're
Yes.
so organized and, like I said, numbers. I love those numbers.
It's,
Good.
yes.
Carol, I wanted to, you had a science fiction thing you were trying to pull together. When you have a chance, I'd be interested if you have a minute or two to bring us up to date. Thank you.
Oh, okay, certainly. When everybody else is done.
Yeah, it looks like everyone else is done. Oh, there's Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
I don't often miss a presentation, but I've missed most of this one, and I am profoundly disappointed because what I saw of this was one of the best we've ever had. Thank you,
Yep.
Lionel.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Oh.
And it's in the recording, so you know.
It is recorded,
Oh, yay!
so you could get, yeah,
Yep, and I'm planning on opening it up to like YouTube and just say to people, hey, here's a presentation that on this topic and go forth and watch it and maybe draw some attention to the Futurist Society because you know, it's a topic near and dear to my heart.
Lino, you might want
Yes.
to watch it before you post it on the internet.
Oh, okay, say more, please.
I'm afraid that I'm kind of embarrassed to see myself on last week's presentation in a number of respects.
I'm going to stop recording.
Okay, yeah, I tried to comb my hair.
Yeah.